What would happen if a wild predator came face to face with a helpless puppy? In the sunburned silence of the Mojave Hills, a lost German shepherd wandered into the
At last,
territory
a
of
squirrel.
a solitary bobcat, an animal known
Not
for
much.
silence, not mercy. Rangers braced for the worst, but what unfolded next defied every law of nature. It wasn't an attack. It was an adoption, a bond, a miracle. This is the true story of a broken hunter, a forgotten pup, and the love that changed not only their lives, but everyone who witnessed it. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy the story, please like and follow. It helps us keep creating more. Your feedback means everything. Thank you. In the pale light of early morning, the Mojave Hills looked almost golden, bathed in dust that shimmered gently in the wind. The wildlife refuge was still save for the rustle of dry leaves and the chirping of a cactus wren. Ranger Clay Harmon adjusted the brim of his sun-bleached hat and took a sip of lukewarm coffee, standing on the porch of the main cabin, like he did every dawn. He had run this place for 30 years. He knew every sound, every scent, every shadow that passed over the land. That's why when the faintest whimper broke through the stillness, he froze. It wasn't a fox cub, not a coyote pup. It was something else. 2 enclosures down, Mira Sanchez paused in her rounds. She heard it too, a soft stuttering whine full of confusion and fear. Her hand went instinctively to her radio. "Clay," she whispered, "there's something in the bobcat habitat. It's crying." The radio crackled back. "Don't go in. I'm coming to you." They met at the observation platform overlooking Bruno's enclosure. Bruno, the old bobcat, was nowhere in sight. Mira raised her binoculars with trembling hands, scanning the rocks and the dense underbrush near the back wall. And then she saw it. A small trembling creature crouched near the base of Bruno's favorite sunning rock. Black and tan fur, oversized paws, floppy ears. It was a German shepherd puppy no more than 10 weeks old. "Oh my God," Mira whispered. "He's just a baby." Clay didn't speak. He reached slowly for his own binoculars, the expression on his face darkening. Then movement. Bruno. The bobcat emerged from behind a bush, moving slowly, but with unmistakable grace. Though age and an old injury had given him a limp, the power in his shoulders was still evident with every step. He was a predator, silent, lethal, and now, aware of the intruder. Mira's breath caught. He sees it. Clay's knuckles turned white around the rail. "Don't make a sound." The puppy, clearly terrified, lowered its belly to the ground. Its entire body trembled, but it didn't run. It couldn't. There was nowhere to go. Bruno approached, step by deliberate step, ears forward, eyes locked. The distance between them shrank. 10 feet, 6 feet, 3. Mira shut her eyes. She braced for the yelp, the scream, the sound of fur tearing. But none came. Instead, the air filled with something else, something softer. When Mira opened her eyes again, Bruno was no longer stalking. He had stopped just a foot away from the puppy, his head tilted slightly. Then he extended his neck slowly, gently, and touched his nose to the pup's. The puppy flinched. Bruno didn't react with teeth or claws. He nudged again, tentative, almost inquisitive. Then, in a move no wildlife manual could explain, Bruno lay down, not in a crouch, not in ambush, flat belly to earth, forelegs outstretched, eyes steady, calm, as if offering trust. The puppy gave a tiny whimper, then crept closer. It sniffed at Bruno's paw, then unbelievably licked his nose. Mira covered her mouth. Clay whispered almost in awe, "He's not attacking, he's greeting him." And then the pup did the unthinkable. He curled up beside Bruno's chest, tucking his small body into the curve of the bobcat's frame like it was the most natural place in the world. Bruno blinked once, then rested his chin gently beside the pup and closed his eyes. They slept. Together. By mid-morning, the sanctuary's main office had become a command post. 3 monitors displayed live feeds from every corner of the Mojave Refuge, but all eyes were glued to the largest screen, the one showing Bruno's enclosure. On it, the old bobcat and the lost puppy lay side by side beneath the rocks, still and serene, as if they'd always belonged together. Dr. Karen Levitt stood with her arms crossed, brows drawn in tight disapproval. "This can't continue," she said, breaking the silence. "Bruno is still a wild animal. We can't predict how long this behavior will last." "Maybe we don't need to predict it," Mira said softly from the doorway. "Maybe we just observe." Clay didn't speak. His weathered face was unreadable, but his eyes never left the screen. Later that day, after confirming the pup showed no signs of injury or illness from afar, they attempted what policy required recovery. 2 seasoned handlers, both in full gear and trained in wildlife emergency response, entered through the secure side gate of the enclosure. One carried a padded shield, the other a carrier lined with towels and treats. The plan was simple approach: quietly distract Bruno with food, gently retrieve the puppy, and exit within 30 seconds. That was the plan. Reality had other ideas. As soon as Bruno sensed movement, he was on his feet. His fur bristled. His shoulders rose. The peaceful guardian from hours before was gone, replaced by a defensive force none of them had ever seen in him before. He didn't hiss. He didn't flee. He stood his ground. And not just that, he stepped between the handlers and the puppy, shielding Riley with his body. A low growl rumbled from his chest. It wasn't rage, it was warning. When one handler edged closer with the shield raised, Bruno struck. A single swipe of his massive paw tore through the corner of the plastic like paper. No contact with flesh, but close enough to send a clear message. From the observation platform, Mira shouted into her radio, "Pull them out. He's protecting the puppy. If we push this, someone's going to get hurt, maybe even Bruno." The team withdrew. The moment the gate clanked shut behind them, Bruno's posture shifted. He turned back to Riley, nuzzled the pup's ear, and gave a low, chuffing sound, gentle, almost fatherly. Riley whined once and leaned into his side. Later that evening, the staff gathered in the office, tension thick in the air. "This isn't sustainable," Dr. Levitt said, pacing. "What if that pup has parasites? What if it nips Bruno too hard while playing and triggers a predatory reflex? Are we really prepared to risk both of their lives over?" "What a fluke." "It's not a fluke," Mira said quietly. Karen turned. "You're speaking emotionally, not scientifically." "No," Mira replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm speaking as someone who's watched that animal for 6 months. He's never bonded, never responded. He barely acknowledges our presence. And now, he's alive. He's engaged. He's caring for something." Clay finally spoke. His voice was low but resolute. "She's right." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're saying we leave them? I'm saying we take every precaution. We monitor them 24/7. We test samples from the puppy as soon as we get a chance. We adjust their feeding. But yes, we let this continue." He looked at the monitor again. Bruno had curled his body protectively around the pup once more. Both slept in the soft sand framed by twilight shadows. "We name him Clay," said suddenly. "The pup." Karen blinked. "Excuse me, Riley," he said. "Because somehow that little wanderer found the one heart in this entire refuge that needed him the most." The days that followed felt like a dream everyone was afraid to wake from. Inside Bruno's enclosure, a miracle unfolded, quiet, natural, and completely unbelievable. The cameras captured everything, and soon the monitor in the main office became the sanctuary's beating heart. Every morning, Clay would arrive early, coffee in hand, and sit in silence before the screen. Mira would follow soon after, notebook ready, documenting behaviors no textbook had ever prepared her for. Even Dr. Levitt, initially skeptical, found herself stopping by more often, arms folded, eyes lingering longer than she admitted. What they saw was simple and astonishing. Bruno was raising Riley, not like a pet, not like a novelty, but like a cub. When Riley playfully jumped at his face, Bruno didn't retaliate with tooth or claw. Instead, he'd hold him down gently with one massive paw until the puppy calmed, then release him with a lick to the nose. When Riley barked at falling leaves or tried to chase shadows, Bruno would sit regal and unmoved until the pup came back to him, panting and proud. Bruno began showing him things. How to stalk, though Riley's clumsy attempts were pure comedy. He'd crouch too low, wiggle too hard, then leap into a puff of dust that scared off nothing but lizards. Bruno, ever patient, would demonstrate again, silent, fluid, precise. At night, they slept curled together in the den. Riley's tiny body pressed into Bruno's ribs, rising and falling with his breath. As Riley grew, so did the bond. Soon the puppy's limbs sprawled over the Bobcat like a weighted blanket, awkward, affectionate, unbothered. To everyone's amazement, Bruno didn't mind. If anything, he seemed to welcome it. Dr. Levitt's team managed to collect a fecal sample from Riley, and the tests came back clear. No parasites, no viruses. A healthy, if slightly underfed domestic pup, likely lost during a family hiking trip. His microchip, when finally scanned, led to a disconnected number and a dead end. He was alone in the world. Except he wasn't. The staff made adjustments. Feeding was split, 2 bowls placed at separate corners. Bruno, to their surprise, respected the arrangement. He let Riley eat his high-protein kibble without interference. Sometimes he even watched. Mira developed a training routine, light commands for Riley, all done from behind the fence. He responded well. He was intelligent, but more than that, he was calm. Unusually calm for a growing shepherd. It became clear why. Bruno had taught him a different rhythm. Where most pups barked and bounced, Riley moved slow, listened deeply, and responded with touch more than noise. He was a dog shaped by stillness, by silence, by the gaze of a wild animal who spoke not in commands, but in presence. Volunteers began to whisper that Riley wasn't like other dogs. He didn't startle easily. He never barked at people. When visitors occasionally passed by the outer perimeter on guided tours, Riley would sit near the fence, ears perked, gaze thoughtful. Children pointed in awe. One little boy whispered, "Is that dog?" The Bobcat's kid. And no one had the heart to say no, because in every way that mattered, he was. Of course, changes came. Riley grew fast. His paws thickened, legs lengthened. He began to outrun Bruno during play, circling the enclosure in wild, joyous sprints. Bruno would watch from atop his favorite rock, his eyes tracking Riley's every move with what looked suspiciously like pride. Their games shifted. Riley fetched sticks and dropped them at Bruno's feet. At first, the Bobcat ignored them. Then one afternoon, he batted the stick once, twice. Riley leapt with joy. It was ridiculous and beautiful, and it couldn't last forever. But no one was ready to speak that truth just yet. For now, Bruno and Riley had built their world, one without rules, or species, or explanation. A world of sun-dappled naps, soft paw taps, clumsy licks, and fierce, silent devotion. By the end of autumn, the air in the Mojave Hills grew sharper. The light changed, less golden, more silvered. In the enclosure, Riley had become a striking young dog, strong-chested and lean, with an alertness that echoed his wild mentor. But with growth came restlessness. He still curled beside Bruno at night, still greeted him with soft whines and tail wags each morning, but his energy was changing. He chased shadows longer. He barked at the sky. He circled the perimeter of the enclosure, not once, but a dozen times a day. Mira noticed it first. "He's outgrowing this," she said quietly to Clay one morning as they watched Riley leap over a boulder skidding with joy. "Not the bond, not Bruno. But this space. He needs more than we can give him here." Clay said nothing at first, just sipped his coffee eyes on the screen. He already knew, but knowing didn't make it easier. That night, Bruno didn't join Riley on their usual walk along the enclosure's edge. He stayed on his rock, watching. Riley returned, nudged him, whined softly. Bruno licked the younger dog's muzzle, then rested his head on his paws. The message was clear. Even Bruno could feel the shift. The next week, Mira visited her grandmother at Summit Hollow, a peaceful senior living residence 2 towns over. She arrived just in time to see the facility's therapy dog making its rounds, an old golden retriever, slow but cheerful, stopping at each room like a practiced healer. The joy was immediate. Residents lit up with smiles. Conversations stirred from silence. One woman who rarely spoke began to hum a lullaby. Mira watched, stunned, and then a thought came clear, undeniable. Riley. He wasn't like other dogs. He didn't jump on strangers. He didn't bark unnecessarily. He had learned something deeper. Stillness, presence, the language of watching and waiting. Traits born not from training, but from Bruno's influence. When she returned to the sanctuary, she found Clay cleaning tools in the barn. "I have an idea," she began. "You're not going to like it, but I think you'll understand." She told him everything, what she saw, what she felt, and why Riley could be more than just the miracle they'd witnessed. He could carry it forward. Clay didn't speak for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Let's talk to them." A week later, they met with Mrs. Evelyn Gable, director of Summit Hollow. At first, she was skeptical. "A Bobcat raised dog," she said, brows raised. "Sounds like something out of a children's book." But then Clay showed her the footage, Bruno gently grooming Riley, sharing his stick in clumsy offering, the two curled together like puzzle pieces that had always fit. By the time the video ended, Evelyn was wiping her eyes. "I want to meet him," she said simply. The next Sunday, they brought Riley to Summit Hollow. It was difficult from the start. He didn't understand the leash. He kept looking back toward the van, whining softly. Mira crouched beside him, whispering, "It's okay. You're okay. You're not leaving him. You're just sharing him." Inside the residence, Riley was hesitant at first. He sniffed the air, tensed at unfamiliar smells. He looked for Bruno. But the resident's gentle, patient waiting gave him space. And then came George, a retired Marine with a 1,000-yard stare and hands that shook even when still. He didn't speak, just sat in the corner reading a newspaper aloud to no one in particular, until Riley walked over and laid his head on the man's lap. George stopped mid-sentence, looked down. His hand moved slowly, softly, and landed on Riley's head. A single tear slid down the man's cheek. He whispered, "Good boy." And from that moment, Riley had a new purpose. Summit Hollow quickly became Riley's new territory, not in the way of fences and borders, but in hearts and hands. He made his rounds each day with quiet dignity. Where other dogs might bark or jump, Riley simply arrived, soft steps, steady gaze, and a kind of presence no one could name. Veterans who hadn't spoken in weeks found themselves telling stories. Elderly women who once sat silently now reached out with shaking hands to pet his head. A widower placed a faded photo of his late wife beside Riley's paws and whispered, "She would have loved you." Riley didn't wag excessively. He didn't chase balls, but he listened with his whole body. He had learned from the best. But even with this new purpose, Riley never stopped looking toward the east window each Sunday morning, ears perked, tail twitching in anticipation. Because every Sunday, Mira came. The sanctuary van would pull up just after breakfast. Riley would race to the door, barely able to contain himself. The moment the back hatch opened, he'd leap in, turning in circles, before settling beside Mira for the ride home. And Clay would be waiting. Back at the Mojave Refuge, behind the dust-covered gate and rows of wind-sculpted trees, there was a place that still belonged to Riley, not because he needed it, but because someone in it still needed him. Bruno. The first time Riley returned, no one knew what to expect. The old Bobcat had grown thinner, his movements slower. His gaze, once sharp as flint, had taken on a deeper stillness, like watching a clock tick in reverse. But when the outer gate opened and Riley bounded toward the enclosure, Bruno was already at the fence, pacing. Not with aggression, not even with impatience, but with unmistakable yearning. As soon as the inner gate clicked open, Riley ducked low and whined, ears back, tail wagging like a flag in the wind. Bruno chuffed a low, trembling call and stepped forward. The moment their heads touched, everyone watching knew nothing had changed. Despite the months apart, despite the new world Riley now belonged to, despite the differences between them that had always been there, the bond remained. They walked the enclosure together, Riley now towering over Bruno, but always yielding space. They drank from the same water dish. They lay on the sunning rock, side by side, as if no time had passed at all. Later, when the sun began to fall behind the hills, Mira called softly. Riley stood, looked once at Bruno, stepped forward, then turned back. He nudged Bruno gently, rested his forehead against the old cat's, and then, with one final look, he followed Mira home. This became their rhythm. Every Sunday, Riley came back. Every Sunday, Bruno waited. And every week, Clay stood silently by, a quiet witness to a miracle still unfolding. The sanctuary team never advertised the story. They never uploaded the videos, never told the press. It was too sacred for headlines, too fragile for the noise of the world. But word still spread in the way true stories do. A bobcat raised a puppy became a healer, and neither forgot the other. As Bruno's body aged, the visits grew shorter. He spent more time in the shade, less on the rock. Riley adapted, laying beside him in silence, letting his presence speak where words never could. The final Sunday came on a still, golden morning. Bruno didn't rise. He blinked slowly as Riley approached, ears flicking once. Riley lay down beside him without a sound, tucking himself close. No whining, no urgency, just warmth. Bruno's eyes closed. When Mira returned an hour later, Riley was still there, guarding, grieving, remembering. They buried Bruno beneath the rock where he'd first taught Riley to sit still and listen. Clay carved a simple stone. Here lies Bruno, the one who chose love. Riley visits still. Not every Sunday, but often enough that the dust remembers. And when he lays beside that rock, nose nestled in the sand, ears flicking at the breeze, it's clear to anyone watching. Some bonds aren't broken. They just change shape.